In a world where money quietly funds power, few commodities are as timeless and untraceable as gold. It glitters on global markets, secures wealth during crisis, and in the right hands, fuels war. Nowhere is this more disturbingly evident than in Sudan, where a vast but largely unregulated gold industry has become the lifeline of geopolitical ambition, criminal enrichment, and devastating conflict. Over the past decade, billions of dollars worth of gold have vanished from Sudan's mines under suspicious circumstances, finding their way into the vaults of Russia and the United Arab Emirates, bypassing the Sudanese people entirely. This operation is not a byproduct of chaos, it is an orchestrated system. Since 2017, Russia's Wagner Group, a private military company with Kremlin backing, began embedding itself in Sudan under the pretense of offering security and mining expertise. In reality, Wagner operatives facilitated gold extraction, protected smuggling routes, and entrenched Russian influence at a time when Moscow sought financial channels free from Western sanctions. Parallel to this, Dubai, the UAE's glimmering gold hub, opened its doors to vast quantities of African gold with little to no scrutiny about its origins. Its refineries became the global gateway for this stolen treasure. At the same time, Sudanese generals, particularly those leading the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, turned the gold trade into a personal fortune, using revenues to buy weapons, suppress opposition, and strike deals with foreign powers. Thus, Sudan's gold became the silent currency of war, fueling the Russian war machine in Ukraine, sustaining paramilitary violence in Sudan, and enriching Gulf markets. All while millions of Sudanese citizens face hunger, poverty, and displacement. What is unfolding in Sudan is not merely a case of illegal mining. It is the construction of a modern empire of extraction, where war, diplomacy, and business blend in shadows, and gold is the thread that connects Moscow, Khartoum, and Dubai. Sudan's entanglement with gold runs deep into the sands of history. Once part of the ancient Nubian and Kushite empires, the region was globally renowned for its rich gold mines. Nubian gold adorned the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, funded ancient wars, and shaped early trade routes that stretched from sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean. But the glory of this legacy faded into centuries of exploitation, first by colonial powers like the British and Turks, and now by modern warlords and foreign interests. The current gold boom began in earnest after South Sudan's secession in 2011, which left the north without access to oil revenues. To compensate, Sudan turned to gold. Within a few years, gold accounted for over 40% of the country's exports, yet much of it never passed through official government channels. By 2017, Sudan produced an estimated 100 tons of gold per year, but less than a quarter of that made it into state records. The rest disappeared, smuggled across borders, traded informally, or swallowed by shadowy intermediaries. This informal gold economy flourished in conflict-ridden areas like Darfur, South Kordofan, and Blue Nile, where artisanal mining became both a livelihood and a liability. With no environmental safeguards or legal protections, thousands of Sudanese dug by hand in dangerous toxic conditions. Many died in collapses or from exposure to mercury. Others became victims of extortion by militias who taxed or seized their findings. The fall of Omar al-Bashir in 2019, hailed initially as a new dawn for Sudan, only deepened the scramble for gold. As the transitional government struggled to establish authority, armed factions saw gold as the quickest route to autonomy and dominance. No group capitalized on this faster than the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti. Originally formed from the infamous Janjaweed militias, the RSF quickly seized control of key mining sites and imposed their own systems of taxation, protection rackets, and smuggling networks. By 2021, Hemeti had become not just a military commander but one of the richest men in Sudan, thanks largely to his grip on the gold trade. He cultivated relationships with foreign buyers, including Dubai-based traders and Russian contractors, creating a triangular exchange: gold for weapons, weapons for control, and control for more gold. For ordinary Sudanese, however, this wealth was a mirage. Inflation soared, the currency collapsed, and basic goods became unaffordable. Hospitals lacked supplies, schools shuttered. Entire villages were displaced by violence around mining zones. Gold, once a symbol of Sudan's ancient pride, had become a tool of modern oppression and global exploitation. The presence of Russia's Wagner Group in Sudan marked a turning point, not only in the country's internal struggle over resources, but also in the geopolitics of Africa. Founded by Dmitry Utkin, a former GRU, Russian military intelligence officer, Wagner operates as a private military contractor but effectively serves as the Kremlin's unofficial army in fragile states across the globe. In Sudan, Wagner found fertile ground for influence, operating under the cover of security contracts and mining partnerships. Their involvement began around 2017, when then-President Omar al-Bashir, increasingly isolated by Western sanctions and reliant on alternative alliances, turned to Russia for protection. In return, Wagner was given access to Sudanese gold through front companies like Mero Gold, a subsidiary of Russia's M Invest, which signed lucrative contracts with the Sudanese Ministry of Minerals. While the contracts appeared legal, investigations revealed they functioned more as a cover for large-scale gold smuggling and illicit extraction, often carried out with military protection from the RSF or Sudanese armed forces. Wagner's operations in Sudan were multifaceted. They provided intelligence services, trained Sudanese military and RSF personnel, and protected mining sites with their own security forces. They also oversaw the logistics of moving gold out of Sudan, often through private airstrips and unregistered flights to Russia, or transshipment hubs like Syria and the UAE. What made Wagner's Sudanese operation especially potent was its ability to operate in secrecy while aligning with both sides of Sudan's fractured power structure. While publicly supporting the transitional government after Bashir's fall, they maintained deep ties with Hemedti's RSF and other military factions. This double dealing allowed them to continue extracting and exporting gold, providing a vital revenue stream for Russia at a time when the West was tightening sanctions due to the war in Ukraine. Leaked documents and satellite imagery have since revealed the extent of Wagner's involvement, not only in mining but in destabilizing Sudanese politics, spreading disinformation, and facilitating arms transfers. The stolen gold, refined or raw, often made its way into international markets with no trace of its violent origin, feeding a global system where profit supersedes principle. While Wagner operated in Sudan's shadows, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, provided the sunlight the operation needed to flourish: an open market, willing refineries, and no questions asked. Dubai, in particular, has built its global reputation as one of the world's premier gold trading hubs, handling nearly a quarter of the world's gold supply. But this prosperity has come at a cost. A regulatory environment so lax it has become a haven for illicit African gold. Sudanese gold, often smuggled by middlemen working with Wagner or RSF operatives, is flown into Dubai in unmarked shipments. Once there, it enters a system that rarely demands proof of origin. Unlike Western gold markets, which increasingly require traceability and conflict-free certification, Dubai's gold sector operates largely on self-declared documents, which can be forged or simply omitted. This has allowed billions of dollars worth of conflict gold from Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and other war-torn nations to be laundered into clean bullion. Investigative reports by Global Witness, Reuters, and CNN have documented how unregistered flights carrying Sudanese gold land in the UAE, where the cargo is immediately processed and enters global supply chains via Dubai's sprawling refineries and gold souks. Some of this gold is turned into jewelry, some sold as investment-grade bars, and much of it exported to countries in Europe and Asia, all appearing legal on paper. The UAE has long denied any wrongdoing, insisting it follows international best practices. But internal documents, whistleblower accounts, and customs data show otherwise. For Sudan, this means that its natural wealth, extracted through child labor, environmental destruction, and militia violence, is not just stolen, but legitimized by the global financial system. The complicity is strategic. The UAE's geopolitical ambitions stretch across Africa, and its alliance with Hemedti's RSF is well documented. In return for gold, The UAE has supplied the RSF with weapons, military training, and political support. The gold for guns exchange has not only prolonged Sudan's civil conflict, but deepened the influence of Gulf monarchies over African affairs, turning Sudan into a pawn in a much larger regional chessboard. In essence, while Russia extracted the gold, the UAE purified and monetized it, becoming the invisible bridge between blood-soaked mines and the luxury markets of the world. At the center of Sudan's gold exploitation is a brutal truth. It could not happen without the willful complicity of Sudan's military elite and warlord factions, especially the notorious Rapid Support Forces, RSF. These are not fringe actors. They are some of the most powerful and feared men in the country, with deep roots in past atrocities and a growing appetite for wealth and control. Leading this empire of corruption is General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti. A former camel trader turned militia leader, Hemeti rose to prominence as the commander of the Janjaweed militias that carried out genocide in Darfur in the early 2000s. Rebranded as the RSF, his forces became a key part of the Sudanese state security apparatus under President Omar al-Bashir, who used them to crush uprisings and secure restive regions. After Bashir's fall in 2019, Hemeti quickly moved to reposition himself, not as a criminal, but as a national leader and international partner. He joined the Transitional Sovereign Council while continuing to expand his control over the country's most lucrative gold mines, especially in Jebel Amer, a region in North Darfur, rich in gold but plagued by tribal conflict. There, the RSF ran operations akin to a private army, taxing miners, driving out competitors, and securing deals with foreign partners, including Russian operatives and Emirati financiers. What makes this especially damning is the degree of state complicity. Rather than curbing RSF power, Sudan's national army and political elites often enabled or ignored their activities, either out of weakness or mutual benefit. Corruption was rampant across the board. Military officials received kickbacks, customs officers allowed smuggled gold through checkpoints, and government figures helped launder the profits through banks or real estate. Internal documents and testimonies have revealed how the RSF used shell companies to disguise its gold exports, sometimes labeling them as construction materials or food shipments. In many cases, Wagner operatives facilitated logistics, providing security for the shipments and helping build infrastructure for mining and smuggling. In return, Wagner received a cut of the profits and, more importantly, deepened Russia's strategic foothold in the region. The result is a deeply compromised state where gold does not belong to the nation, it belongs to warlords. And instead of funding public services, this wealth fuels conflict, buys weapons, and maintains the luxurious lifestyles of men who have turned Sudan into a battlefield of personal gain. Once extracted, Sudan's gold follows a well-mapped yet shadowy route that crisscrosses borders, evades detection, and ultimately turns blood-stained metal into spotless bullion. The journey begins in mines controlled by the RSF or affiliated militias, where gold is often purchased directly from artisanal miners for cash, or taken by force. From there, the gold is transported via ground convoys or small aircraft to regional hubs such as Khartoum, Niala, or Port Sudan. In many cases, gold is hidden in vehicles, concealed within cargo shipments, or declared under false customs documents. These routes are protected by RSF fighters or bribed security officials, ensuring that few questions are asked and no inspections are made. According to leaked intelligence and investigative reports, the gold is then funneled through a series of secretive export channels. One common method involves private airstrips, where small planes, often unregistered or misidentified, fly directly from Sudan to destinations like Dubai, Damascus, or Benghazi. In several cases, flights tied to Russian or Emirati companies have been documented departing Sudan with tons of undeclared gold, with no accompanying customs checks. Dubai is the most common endpoint. There, Sudanese gold enters a sophisticated laundering system. Some is sold directly to refineries without formal certification, while other batches pass through third-party shell companies that falsify origin documents, labeling Sudanese gold as originating from other African nations with less scrutiny. Once refined, this gold becomes virtually untraceable and can be sold on global markets, used as investment reserves, or traded for arms and equipment. These operations are not isolated. They are coordinated. Reports suggest that Sudanese intelligence, RSF logistics, Russian Wagner operatives, and UAE gold buyers collaborate closely to keep this system running. Even when confronted with evidence, governments in Sudan, Russia, and the UAE have denied wrongdoing or refused to investigate, citing national security or lack of jurisdiction. In this shadow economy, the losers are the Sudanese people. As billions in gold vanish each year, the country's economy crumbles, its youth flee in desperation, and conflict continues to escalate. Meanwhile, foreign actors grow stronger, and a global market continues to profit from the gold that bleeds a nation dry. Despite the secretive nature of Sudan's gold smuggling operations, the truth has not remained entirely hidden. Over the past few years, a combination of leaked intelligence, satellite data, investigative journalism, and whistleblower reports has pulled back the curtain on the shadow network connecting Sudan's gold fields to international power centers. And now, the United States and international community are paying close attention. Beginning in 2020 and escalating after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, U.S. intelligence agencies began tracking financial lifelines that supported the Russian war machine. What they discovered shocked many. Sudan's illicit gold exports, facilitated by Wagner Group and laundered through Dubai, were a significant source of off-the-books funding for Russia. This gold was helping Russia evade Western sanctions, stabilize its currency, and pay for military operations abroad. In response, the U.S. Department of the Treasury placed sanctions on Mero Gold, Wagner's Sudanese front company, and other related entities under its Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC list. The Biden administration also publicly condemned Wagner's role in Sudan and across Africa, describing its activities as predatory and destabilizing. International watchdog groups like Global Witness, The Sentry, and Amnesty International amplified these concerns, publishing detailed reports with flight records, corporate linkages, and interviews with Sudanese miners and security officers. These reports highlighted how gold smuggling was intertwined with human rights abuses, environmental destruction, and the perpetuation of Sudan's internal wars. However, concrete action has been slow and inconsistent. While Western nations issued statements and some targeted sanctions, the UAE has largely remained untouched. Dubai's gold industry continues to thrive, and the lack of international regulation or enforcement has allowed illicit trade to continue largely unchecked. Calls for reform of global gold markets, particularly stronger traceability standards and transparency in Dubai, have been made, but met with resistance from powerful economic interests. The United Nations has acknowledged the issue in its reports on Sudan, but has struggled to enforce any accountability due to internal divisions, veto powers, and competing geopolitical agendas. Ultimately, awareness is not enough. Without coordinated global pressure, enforcement mechanisms, and a rethinking of how resource wealth is traced and traded, Sudan's gold will remain a tool of tyranny, not prosperity. The story of Sudan's stolen gold is more than a case study in corruption. It's a warning about the future of geopolitics, where natural resources, private military contractors, and state-backed enterprises merge in a new form of global exploitation. The Sudan case shows how gold, long seen as a safe haven asset, has become a weapon, funding wars, fueling authoritarian regimes, and deepening economic injustice. As the global demand for gold rises, whether for investment, jewelry, or technological production, the competition for unregulated sources will intensify. Without urgent international reform, more fragile states like Sudan will be drawn into this vortex, their resources extracted, their people oppressed, their sovereignty sold off in the back rooms of foreign embassies and corporate boardrooms. For Sudan, the future remains uncertain. The civil war between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and RSF continues to devastate the country. Millions have been displaced, famine looms, and infrastructure has collapsed. Yet Sudan's gold still flows out, its profits never touching the lives of ordinary citizens. Instead, they line the pockets of generals, fund Russian military aggression, and polish the skylines of Gulf kingdoms. What must change is not just enforcement, but accountability and transparency at every level. That means requiring end-to-end traceability of gold, punishing countries and corporations that knowingly buy conflict gold, and dismantling the financial systems that allow kleptocrats to move wealth with impunity. Until that happens, Sudan's gold will remain a curse, a silent enabler of suffering in a world that claims to care. In the end, the gold of Sudan tells a story that repeats across continents, that where power meets profit, justice is often buried.